Welcome back to Gears 5.
So, Kate, we just established in the last part that your grandmother had an arguably pedophilic time as a child, and also it turns out that your mother is now the Locust Queen. So now that you realize that you have to go face the Locust Queen, which may or may not be your mother, how are you going to handle that from now on?
Well, when life gives you lemons.
By the way, Kate.
Lemons in your eye.
By the way, Kate.
Lemon cake.
By the way, Kate. Now that we've had an entire act dedicated to you, I think maybe we can have the dedicated entire act to maybe fleshing out JD, since like he's kind of the son of the protagonist of the original trilogy. Maybe we should focus on him. No.
How about having Dell being playable in this section?
Or even that. Sure. Why not? Let's have. How about you give one of us the spotlight for a change, Kate?
You didn't read the small print in your contract, clearly.
Yeah, but regardless, addressing the pedophilia thing, all I have to say is, here's Gears 5 in a nutshell. I'm going to jail! There you go.
Also,
wait, question. Genuine question.
Yes.
Is there any point in the game where where it's like, a woman doing this? Like, is there any...
No, that's in Gears Judgment. Basically, in Gears of War Judgment... Yeah, in Gears of War Judgment, Deji, out of nowhere... for no reason, because up until that point nobody ever showed any kind of misogynistic tendencies. Suddenly, for no reason, when the female corporal asks a question to the colonel, because his answer, and I'm quoting now, Colonel, leave questions to men with arms or something. I actually forgot the exact words.
Leave talented decision to men with arms or something. We have a highlight with.
Basically, Deji, he literally told her, "Shut up, woman. The men are talking." That's basically it.
Okay, so I know what you should do for the thumbnail whenever you get to that scene.
We already did that.
You just replace. You take that. Whoever said that, take his head and put him over the. I'll say off screen.
That's a nice thought, Dej. But one, we already did that. Two, there is no real material that involves something to do with that.
I did make a highlight of it though. You can check the SCWRM highlights playlist to check that if you want.
If I may though, come to think of it, one of the writers from that game also works on this game. So I forget if we answered this before, but was that guy's first time ever writing?
Tom Bissell? No. Remember, Tom Bissell wrote, helped Greg. I forgot his last name. Greg's sister. Tom Rizzo's best friend was? What's his name?
Oh, Greg Sestero.
That's it, Greg Sestero. He helped Greg Sestero write The Disaster Artist, the original book that the movie's based on.
So I guess he helped in something good, but okay. My point was was Gears of War Judgment his first time writing for the franchise?
Yes, Gears of War Judgment. He was. To be fair, he was a co-writer on that, so we don't know who was responsible for that scene. But the Theosphere, of course, is what we talked about before, where he's creating the problem so that in this game he can present himself as a solution, basically.
Mind you, I haven't seen so far, neither in Gears 4 nor this situation that corroborates that. Having people actually ostracizing Kate because she's a woman, she cannot fight on the battlefield, which, to be fair, is in tune with what the rest of the franchise is for, which... again, begs the question. It's just in Judgment that it happens. It's literally the one thing where the franchise farts his brain out.
I have a bit of a theory, too. I get the feeling Tom Bissell just did not do good research for the franchise, because Judgment in general has a lot of weird things. Now, to be fair, from what I recall, there's nothing that blatantly, contradicts the story of the later trilogies, but there are a lot of war bits in there that contradict other war bits here.
I mean, maybe the idea...
The whole women thing, chain of command in some regards here. Not to mention the fact that judge acts like literally no other military official that we've seen in this entire...
Yeah, I know what one may think. Well, it's set to establish that, that that higher up, he doesn't really look at people in general, in a good way, and so when it comes to Sophia, he decides to be a complete misogynistic asshole about it. But again, it feels so uncharacteristic because, like I kept saying, especially when Reeves try to use this kind of theory, the situation during the Locust War is so much that humanity doesn't have even the luxury to be misogynistic. They have to fight with every single possible, human resource available that they have. They literally do not have time to be like that.
Yeah.
You got no time.
Speaking of time, go to 5:30.
But it's like Theo mentioned, the Locust Wars were something that were so bad that the warring sides from the previous war immediately joined forces.
Okay.
It's like having somebody portray the human side for the Locusts. It doesn't make any sense. The Locusts are absolutely terrible.
And go.
There you
The
go.
Locusts are absolutely terrible to work with. You'd have to hate humanity to want to join with the Locusts, and even misanthropes would
so basically they're the average Twitter user, gotcha.
Sure, let's go with that. It's okay. It's one of those cases. Okay, maybe the writer's idea was to establish that guy. Okay, this is an asshole that you're supposed to hate. Okay, he wanted to really. Again, it's a typical bad writing trick. Instead of actually making the characters you're supposed to root for interesting, he instead makes the opposing characters to your protagonist as assholeish as they can, just so you'll have no excuse but to like the protagonist over him.
But here's the problem, though. By the end of Judgment, we're supposed to like the judge because now he apparently sees the writing almost easy on them in the end. And I guess we're supposed to feel sorry that he's dead later on with his statue and everything.
Okay. For that one specific, I get the idea there's a bit of irony and a bit of frustration on part of Baird and Padduk, because again, this guy has shitted pretty much all over them, and he gets to be remembered as a hero because he did a courageous act off screen, mind you.
I'd agree. But no, the weird thing is at the end of the story seems to suggest that he's now in the right because.
Yeah, no, I was about to mention again. Yes, you would think that, but then you actually think for 2 seconds and realize, well, shit, the problem was created by his own incompetence because he allowed the trial to continue despite the Locust banging at the doors of the fucking courtroom.
Pretty much. Yeah, they were literally killing some people. And
there was even a soldier that said, are you sure we cannot do this somewhere else?
Gears of War Judgment is incredibly stupid, Deji. That's the basic gist of it. In fact, all three of the post Gears of War 3 games are incredibly stupid in their plot.
Yeah.
Some more than others, but Judgment is probably the most stupid just logically. This one is the most annoying to me in terms of just how badly told the story is, but Judgment is the most stupid one logically, most likely, just because of the very concept of the trial is just so dumb.
Now, so why I bring this up is that, well, guys, it seems like the weak link between all these three seems to be the one writer who's been consistent among all of them, Tom Bissell. Okay, I do wonder, did the guy never get around to doing his research? Because Gears 4 and 5 also feel like an extension of the issue of a writer who didn't do research of the previous trilogy, suddenly stepping in and going, well, I'll show them how it's done properly. Again, even though I didn't research the original trilogy. I'm not going to say for certain that is the case, that he never did his research, but constantly there was stuff going on in all three of the games that he's
That's the thing, Jova. That's the thing, Jova. Okay, so he's a writer who didn't do his research. Well, okay, how about Rod Ferguson, the director of this game, who was the producer of the original trilogy? You'd think he would be able to tell Tom, actually, Tom, you can't do this because it conflicts with the original trilogy. Maybe you could, here's some tips for what you should do instead.
Are you telling me that the version we got is the actual filtered one and originally was supposed to be even worse?
Oh God!
Oh God!
Imagine.
Could you imagine the worst version of this?
It's just so.
Considering how I just said that no one is doing the whole Katie's a woman, therefore we should hate her or something, or or even worse when it comes to other character assassination. Again, I haven't seen the rest of the game yet. You know, I get the idea. Yes, things could be even worse than.
Oh no! I can tell you this, Teo, without spoilers. No, but Kate doesn't have her against the Colonel equivalent moment in this game. Don't worry. No, that's the
Again,
thing.
it's more than I can say for other products that push up a female protagonist, at least so far.
I think my overall issue, Teo, it's not so much that. Here's the thing. My issue is that, like me and Joe have been saying, the game didn't really do all the necessary legwork to earn the right to put this character in the limelight as the primary focus. That's the problem. She wasn't interested in Gears 4. She wasn't like. It's just that they were. She was put in here because there was clearly an agenda to be put forth. Really, it doesn't feel like an actual. Oh, okay. Okay, now that Kate is one of the fan favorite characters, so fans are totally gonna love if we focus on her and develop her backstory. And it doesn't feel like that to me at all. It feels
true, but I argue it's done as at least a more elegant job than other products I've tried to do. You know,
sure. I guess
at the very least, I don't hate her. I don't think as a character technically hates her, but me, I actually have a potential liking to actually play as her.
So far, I'd rather. If you tied me to a chair and forced me to take a bad game story to sit through, I'd rather watch this than Last of Us Part 2.
Oh no, definitely. No, definitely.
Dang, you're really hanging for a low hanging fruit, huh?
No,
yeah.
The low hanging fruit is somewhere, something else. But
no. Last of Us Part 2 is like has more story to it than this game. So of course there's a lot more shit in it. So that's just not even.
If I may,
go ahead.
Teo does raise a good point, though, that who knows, maybe this game could have actually been worse, because yes, this game does commit a lot of the problems of trying to induct a new strong female character, but by God, at least they don't go to the lengths of having them actually spout the pretentious narrative in story about how, oh, you just look down on me because I'm a woman, or
you don't understand how we feel.
And I call the shots, or can you believe? Just imagine if they'd done something like where Marcus dies, his arm is up behind. It'll look good on him. It'll truly look good on a woman.
Well, even for the passage of out of the armor, Marcus actually chooses the one that was from, Anya. So,
mind you, it's not a good attempt, but like I said with the pedophilia thing, I do wonder if the story coming off bad like this was again more so ignorance rather than legit ill intent. Don't get me wrong.
Remember, Jova, never attribute to malice what can be easily attributed to stupidity.
Yeah,
okay.
Okay. I think that's the main difference between something like this or Last of Us 2. Last of Us 2, the intent.
No, that's plain malice. That's plain malice.
Yeah, the malice and intent feel like it's there. Here in Gears 5, while it does have a lot of incredibly dumb decisions, I do find myself defaulting more to stupidity rather than full-on malice, because it really
is that the shadow logo on the monitor. Logo.
I don't even know what that logo is.
I was about to mention. Okay, first of all, that since a thing that was established in the previous part that Aiden commented on, this particular desert design is pretty neat and a way to incorporate the color red, which seems to be present in all of the marketing and the game's
it was
theme. Second, I get the idea. Remember, Baird and then Padduk mentioned there is this facility that is buried under the sand, and here we're getting here to get the satellite that includes the Emerald Dawn.
Exactly.
If I recall correctly, this is an old facility from the Pendulum War that was used to house, the spare parts, among other things.
Exactly. Very good.
So yeah, we're getting also some lore, I guess.
No, that's the thing too. Lore building and world building is the only thing this story does well, if you ask me. Like the actual storyline and characterization, that's what it really fails. Like. And like I said, all the characterization all the lore and world building could have very easily been conveyed just as effectively without having to do a complete detour that amounts to little in the grand scheme of things. But go ahead, Jova. Carry on.
But yeah, in regards to this game, it really is a shame that this game did turn out the way it was. Like, ironically, though, I feel like the series and this game in particular feel like a reflection of Microsoft at the time and arguably still to the present. Constantly trying to win back the fans with stuff that, yeah, I'm sure they definitely had good intentions on, but still do brain-dead stuff. And look, that is not excusing the actual negative stuff that they've been doing, especially with the multiplayer and stuff like that. But
It's one of the
other time and stuff.
I think the main issue is that these developers, the coalition, they just don't get Gears. We need a complete if I was in charge, I would fire everybody and try to actually reconstruct the entire studio, because it's abundantly clear that these people just don't get Gears. It just.
Ask what Tio wait, hold on, Rich, I will have to ask what Tio asked, though. What the heck happened with Rod Ferguson? Like, hasn't this guy technically been around
Since the beginning, yes.
Enough?
Since the beginning, actually. He was the producer of the first game, Joe.
I mean, again, if most of the problem seems to be just for character writing, I guess the first and foremost is actually to get a different writer. When it comes to actual programming and gameplay style, aside from the actual multiplayer, which was developed by, again, Splash Damage, which seem to have done a bad job no matter what game they developed, unless it's supposedly Gear Tactics, Gears, yes.
Give me a hand.
Aside from that, the gameplay for the single player seems to be stable enough.
Oh, no, it is.
And it works for its own. So in terms of actual development team, I would only technically replace the people in charge of actually writing.
Oh no, definitely.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing, too. Like I've already said, I myself said that a few parts ago. Looking at it objectively, this is a perfectly serviceable, perfectly competent third-person cover-based shooter. It is. The problem too is that there's nothing that this game is that these games are doing. Here we were using Last of Us Part 2 as an example, and we brought it up earlier when it comes to the gameplay. See, let me answer your question from a few parts ago, Dej. See, the reason I don't consider the gameplay of Last of Us Part 2 great, even just the gameplay itself, is because the gameplay of Last of Us Part 2 is incredibly outdated by today's standards. Where in 2013, for the first game, it was fine, because
then you could argue it was kind of a bit old. Like,
even then, it could have been better.
From the story.
The gameplay of the original Last of Us for 2013 standards was good, not great, but good. It served its purpose, and combined with the story, it allowed for a really good experience. The problem there is that Last of Us Part 2 doesn't do barely anything to evolve the formula to modern standards. So, kind of the same thing happens with Gears 4 and 5. Yes, the same competent, working, functional, cover-based shooting mechanics are still here, but they're still the same mechanics we've been playing since 2006, Even
worse, the story arguably affected the gameplay negatively.
There's nothing here that you cannot get from better cover-based shooters, and as a result it makes this game come across as just, okay, it's competent, it functions, but if that's all you're asking for, then have at it, I guess, but there are far better, even in this genre of games, there are better options right now. Go ahead, Jova.
But there is one. Isn't gameplay-wise? Isn't The Last of Us basically just like Uncharted for the most part?
Not really.
Not really. It's
more fast-paced, and you're mostly relying on the guns of the enemies that you kill when you find on the ground. You have to improvise on the spot and doing acrobatic stuff.
Okay, let me put it this way, Dej. Think of Last of Us as a
survival horror.
Think of it as an easier take on what Resident Evil does, not 4, 5, and 6, the more modern Resident Evil remakes we've been having and stuff like that. Conserve your ammo so that you can only use it when necessary, all that good stuff. It's basically an easier take on what Resident Evil does, basically. Think of it like that.
With also self-sections,
Because I did remember when the first game came out, I remember people were like, this is where Resident Evil should have evolved to. But I think that was mostly, whoa, that was bad. That was because of how people were frustrated with 6.
Well, yeah, that's because it's because at the time, remember, 2013 was also when we got Resident Evil 6, which is by far the worst Resident Evil game ever made.
Six
So
relies way too much on spectacle
So
and
that was
having the characters
2012.
doing weird Hollywood acrobatic shit. You know,
And the
Basically-
pacing is
it doesn't
terrible.
really understand what the franchise was until that point.
by contrast, Deji.
Yeah, 6 was 2012.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, whatever.
yeah,
Whatever.
it
The
was
whatever. It
22.
came out around that time. That's all that's necessary. Go ahead, Jova.
Okay, Resident Evil 6. The story and pacing were terrible. The gameplay styles were different for each campaign. They could range from, oh, this actually feels like it's harkening back to Resident Evil Classic, to Jesus Christ, I didn't ask for Call of Duty. Stop.
Chris.
Please stop.
And then there's Jake, who just punches the shit out of people, which I get the thought process behind. People loved how Wesker became superhuman the game, as the games passed on, so probably Capcom wanted to have a game where you play closely as him. But again, it's the whole way it's presented that just sadly doesn't work.
You know, you know how, in terms of like change, you know how like in terms of gameplay changes, you know what the transition from 6 to 7 reminds me of a bit?
Wow.
But
James Bond half the time. By that I mean, James Bond has this unfortunate habit of getting so ridiculous at times that it completely loses all sense of coherence and in some cases fun. So the next one calms the fuck down. I'm guessing that's what happened with 6 to 7.
And
I thought you were talking
okay,
about
right.
James Bond games, but
Oh no, James Bond in general, I mean.
sure. By
How it
contrast,
just gets so ridiculously crazy, and then the next
Like-
one calms down.
Okay.
There's a movie literally called Octopussy. That would not fly in today's standard.
no, I wouldn't. But anyway, by contrast, Deji, Uncharted is more of an action adventure that focuses very much on playable action sequences. Like for example, there's a sequence in Uncharted 3 where you're basically trying your best to survive a falling plane, so you have to deal with the gravity and all that stuff. So basically focusing on taking cool, exciting movie action sequences and trying to make them interactable in a fun gameplay sort of way. Basically, that's the basic point. So it's different to both franchises. Back to this though.
yeah, I'm seeing that you're actually making good use of the stealth for a change.
Well, like I said, the Jack's abilities in this game are fine. Again, like I said, the gameplay in this game.
I remember you mentioning that the stealth sections felt clunky, but I guess it works only at the beginning.
Well,
If I may.
It's more so. Okay, when I said that, I was mostly talking about the player character's stealth abilities more so than Jack's abilities, because I'm guessing you may argue, well, maybe that's why maybe they want you to focus
Like
on Jack's
the point
abilities.
here to combine the two.
I guess it's just that I think we could do better. Go ahead.
If I may, I can't help but feel like with Gears 5 that for the first time they may have been focusing more properly on the story mode than the multiplayer, because yes, obviously the multiplayer was what was going to make them a lot of money, and there's plenty of controversy with how they've been abusing microtransactions, but quite honestly, the multiplayer feels like an afterthought in this game, which is kind of a cardinal sin for Gears of War. Like,
Well, I wouldn't know.
this.
So
Well, from what I've researched and seen, the multiplayer feels like an afterthought in this game. Like, the maps are not really that great. The abilities you can get in multiplayer aren't nearly as well thought out or balanced as previous games were. Like, it just feels like an overall mess. Whereas, look at the single player campaign in this one. With so much as Jack, it feels like there's much better customizables. You have different outfits for different areas you're here. Mind you, the way you get outfits in the multiplayer is BS, but regardless, it does seem like a lot more focus was on the campaign this time. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Problem is, the campaign still overall sucks. Like, maybe if you're in it strictly for gameplay, you might have a good time, but look, like I said, it's neat and decent, but it doesn't really have a gripping story to help keep your blood pumping here.
like unlike Metal Gear Solid 5, which has gameplay that is so compelling and so fun that can single-handedly sustain the game even if you don't like the story, the gameplay of this game is not on that level. It can, it's fine, but I don't think it can sustain the game entirely.
Also,
Like,
to
don't get
mention,
me wrong.
sorry, go on, sorry.
part of what did help Gears, and I'm not gonna act like, to be fair, back in the day you could say that some of the gameplay of the Classic Trilogy was groundbreaking, but even if they didn't have that going for them, which they did, mind you, the story was definitely gripping to put you in the mood for each of the campaigns here, upping the stakes constantly.
Yeah.
Again, special mention goes to Gears 2, which is pretty much a wild adventure of Marcus and his amazing friends as things get crazier and crazier and crazier. And then Gears 3 just took that ball and scored 7 touchdowns.
Here's the basic gist of it. Gears of War 1 was the introduction aspect. That's where they meet Cole and everything. In Gears of War 2, it's basically the more high octane in terms of spectacle, whereas Gears of War 3 is the more emotionally driven.
And thus comes off as a pretty gripping conclusion.
Yeah, basically. With Adam sacrificing himself, sadly, for nothing at this point. But that's a topic for another...
Tom's sacrificing himself as well. Practically Marcus's brother.
Again, Jova, I kept saying, and I still reiterate, and I will even for potentially the Final Fantasy if I actually managed to remember, even if I seem to be more okay with some of the bullshit that the story is providing, my jumping the shark movement will always be the moment where they reveal that Dom never truly died. Because I know that these people, I get the idea that these people are potentially capable of doing that. I don't mean, being playable in the multiplayer as game. That is legitimately fine.
Campaign-wise.
It was even released, as a pre-updates from what I remember. But no, if story-wise, they pull an excuse of something, he managed to jump away from the car at the last second and he managed to retire, that would be my dropping point.
Oh no, it's
technically by the standards, he could technically come back. Think about it.
I know.
Technically back. Reyna is technically alive, even though by all intents and purposes,
much like Pedro was suggesting, here's an idea. If you really wanted to rescue a noble character in proposing modern context, show us that Sophia is still alive, that managed to escape her captures, because again, you left that plot hanging deliberately about it. That would be an interesting thing to explore as a concept.
Yeah, it's also. Again, see, here's the thing. Here's what I'll say. Might as well bring that up, what Dova was talking about earlier, because I don't think Deji's aware of this. Basically, Deji, allow me to explain to you some stuff about the microtransactions of this game, in the multiplayer specifically. Basically, Deji, for a killing animation, you have to pay $8. And keep in mind, these killing animations were already included in the original trilogy. So of course it's even by its own it's ridiculous, but by the standards of the original trilogy, it's even more ridiculous. Basically,
it's like the tuxedo in Metal Gear Solid was a free costume you could gain in the Metal Gear series until Metal Gear Solid 5 when they started charging for it.
$10 for a character in multiplayer if you don't want to grind for all the necessary stuff that you need to unlock it in game. 25
modern gaming.
$25 for a pack of character and weapon skins. I'm not even kidding.
Welcome to modern gaming.
No, that's the thing. Okay. No, you want to hear the fun part, Edge? Shortly before this game came out, and you can look this up if you want to read for yourself. The Coalition said, and I quote, We're thinking that we're going to think forward and really think ahead in the industry when it comes to our monetization by not including loot boxes. There you go, Dej. See, they're being awesome in their mind because they didn't put loot boxes in the game. I'm not kidding. You can look this up. Go ahead.
But are you ready for the biggest icing on the cake? You want to know a game that would have been perfect for microtransactions that also came out around the time? Forza 4. And guess what? There were no microtransactions in Forza 4. Which kind of led a lot of people to believe that the Coalition are more in on putting these microtransactions as opposed to something that Microsoft mandated.
Playground Games apparently the Coalition is incredibly greedy, whereas Playground Games at the very least is, at the very least they're not greedy, it seems.
Again. Forza 4 seemed like a game absolutely set for microtransactions, but no, they never gave in to that even. And for as much as I may not really care for Forza games, I will respect them for not putting in microtransactions.
Sure. Halo's the same thing. Halo 5 is full of microtransactions, and we already know that there's going to be a shit ton of Destiny-style microtransactions in Halo Infinite because.
Well, of course, Pedro. How else are we going to support our games as a service new Halo game that I'm sure the fans are going to love?
Again, that's my main problem. Ever since Game Pass became a thing, every single game, first-party game by Microsoft is games as a service. Every single one. Even Fable is now rumored to be a quote-unquote living world, whatever that means. I'm assuming it means like they're trying to implement games as a service elements where they create expansions of sorts. I don't know, but I'm not the best person to explain that. So.
My guess is that the mentality with Games Pass is, there's a chance that people may not, actually pay for our games possibly full price, so that gives us every excuse we can to treat it like it's a free-to-play game.
That being said, to also further explain things to Deji, aside the multiplayer, at least based on what I've seen and what I've heard from people who actually play the game at launch, was very, very, very broken at launch. But here's the thing, Dej. According to people who are a lot of fans who are also playing at launch, the campaign itself also released with a lot of bugs. For example, there's actually a YouTuber that I follow who's a fan of Gears, who actually tried to play the game at launch, and he eventually gave up because his campaign playthrough kept crashing, and he got tired of it. Because eventually it got patched out. I can tell you that, as you can see from my playthrough. Eventually they patched that shit out. But apparently, from what I've heard, even the campaign had crashes at launch. So it's not. So the game did release in a questionable state. That's basically the point that I'm trying to make. Basically,
very bad.
From what keep in mind, from what I've heard, I mean, obviously, I cannot give direct, incredible evidence of this because I don't think it's possible for me to get a. I don't know if. Okay, I know that the PlayStation 4 and 5 don't force you to patch your physical games to play them. I know the Switch does, but I don't remember if Xbox does it.
I think the embarrassing thing is, the game, as Pedro had mentioned to me, quite frequently was getting constantly delayed, much to people's chagrin. And so that's supposed to be an assurance that things will get better. They didn't.
Again, my main issue is just the fact that the coalition. Okay, maybe it's either lack of talent or lack of passion or both. But clearly, this is not working. The current status quo regarding Gears is not working. Something drastic needs to be made because, yes, it's competent.
So what you're saying is that we need to change Gears.
Sure, exactly. Like Taylor has been saying, and I've said it myself even before, the game is perfectly competent on a gameplay standpoint, but competency alone is not worthy of applause. I'm sorry.
All right. So since it's related to Microsoft, years ago, Screw Attack made a list of franchises that should end, and they put Halo onto it. I was like, yes, Halo 4 is coming out. Yeah. So you know how long ago this was. And they said it feels like it's going to be like Weekend at Bernie's, where it's like, it's not the same as going to the party as the first time or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, we're dragging this out. See you for the next part, everybody. You can finish maybe some other time.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
See ya.